The NFL draft always makes some huge changes to fantasy value for better or worse. And for today's video, honestly, I think Jim Carrey summed it up best.
Le who? The her.
Yo, Headliner Nation, today's video is all about a few players that walked away from the NFL draft with decreased value in fantasy. Long-term for you dynasty players, these could end up being great areas. But for right now in 2023, it could end up being tough finding fantasy value consistently. Let's start off out in LA. Quentin Johnson was a great pick to help Justin Herbert, but he hemorrhages the value of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And it's crazy to see Mike Williams' underdog ADP at wide receiver 21 being higher than Keenan Allen, considering Quentin Johnson most likely replicates what Mike Williams does. And speaking of underdog, if you haven't signed up using code word headliners yet, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Download the app, head to their website, sign up, use code word headliners, and all you have to do is deposit $10. If you do that, not only are you going to get a free draft guide from us, but you're also going to have that deposit matched by Underdog. And for the first 1,000 viewers to do that, we're going to put you into a drawing to pick a piece of memorabilia from Jake's office. So head on over to Underdog, code word headliners when you sign up, make your $10 deposit, and get that free draft guide right now. Back to it. With Quentin Johnson and Mike Williams on the outside and Keenan Allen in the slot, that's great for Justin Herbert from a real life perspective. But from fantasy purposes, Keenan Allen, maybe he sees the volume go down, but the efficiency rise a little bit. But even if Quentin Johnson sees 60 or 70 targets this season, that is still a lot of targets to take away from those two guys, considering Austin Eckler is still on the roster. So for 2023, trying to figure out if it's Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, or Quentin Johnson, it's probably going to make your head hurt a little bit. The Seattle Seahawks are in the same boat. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on the outside, and my wide receiver one in the draft, Jackson Smith-Njigba, in the slot. This is great for Geno Smith, and it makes the Seahawks offense deadly with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet in the backfield. But once again, even if Jackson Smith-Njigba gets 60, 70, 80 targets, that is a lot to take away from DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, especially considering Tyler Lockett is already highly vulnerable. But over on Underdog, Jackson Smith-Njigba has already surpassed Tyler Lockett in ADP. He's the wide receiver 29, while Lockett has slipped down to wide receiver 32. And DK Metcalf stays put right at wide receiver 15. Honestly, for me, this makes DK Metcalf a little bit more of a mid to low end wide receiver 2, with Tyler Lockett kind of in the same area. But once again, his big games will be huge and his little games will kill you. The biggest thing for DK Metcalf is he will also have some big games because he's going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage on the outside. But we're going to have to see some uber crazy efficiency for him to get closer to wide receiver 1, because I just don't believe enough targets will be there. Remember a couple years ago when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted in the first round by the Kansas City Chiefs? And remember how he was the second coming of Jamal Charles and he was going to explode in that Chiefs offense and be a top running back option? TEH was going as high as running back 3 that offseason at one point. And we here on the Fantasy Headliners told all of you not to fall for the trap. And guess what? The first couple of weeks, we heard it. But guess who ended up being right? I'm sorry to tell you, everybody, but I really feel like Bijan Robinson is going to be a trap again this season. Bijan Robinson's ADP on Underdog is all the way up to RB2. What? I get it. I actually mocked Bijan Robinson to the Falcons multiple times this offseason because I knew what they wanted to do with the run game in that offense. This absolutely destroys Tyler Algier, who is going to be a late round pickup that as your RB4 could have been really beneficial to you, but he's basically worthless at this point. But he's still there, and the GM of the Falcons has had some interesting comments. He praised Tyler Algier. He talked about how he could be the hammer in this offense and a guy that could get a lot of short yardage situation and see the goal line. Now, why that might not be enough for us to draft him in fantasy, it is enough for us to say Bijan Robinson at RB2 is probably a little high, because Robinson is going to make an impact in the passing game, and they're going to move him around and even let him play in the slot a little bit. But if he only sees, let's say, 60% of the the carries on the ground, and he loses some of those high leverage touchdowns at the goal line that Tyler Algier could see, that is a lot of fantasy points that he could leave off the board this season. So long term, I like Bijan Robinson in this offense, but I think some of that high upside that you're wanting won't be there if they give Tyler Algier enough touches on the ground. Realistically, Bijan Robinson will still be a RB1, but I'm going to put him a little bit lower from mid to low end RB1 status, maybe in that 8 to 11 range. Tyler Algier, I'm sorry, man. You're done. After coming on late last season, Dawson Knox was definitely a guy that could have hopped back into mid tight end 1 status this season. In the red zone, he gets tons of looks from Josh Allen, but the Buffalo Bills decided to spend their first round pick on another tight end, Dalton Kincaid. So is that crushing to Dawson Knox? Probably, although there still is an opportunity because it sounds like Dalton Kincaid could play in the slot a lot this season. And if he does, Dawson Knox could still line up as a normal tight end at the end of the line. But it's going to be those touchdowns again that would propel Knox. I do think Gabe Davis bounces back. We still have Stephon Diggs. You've added Dalton Kincaid, and Dalton Kincaid, yeah, we want to be a little bit careful with rookie tight ends, but even if he sees 50, 60, 70 targets, that's still a lot, especially over the middle of the field, that can be taken away from Dawson Knox. At that point, Knox just needs a whole lot of touchdowns. Over on Underdog, his ADP of tight end 14 is pretty realistic, but any real upside that we could see going up to maybe like tight end 8 is probably lost at this point. When the Lions signed David Montgomery this offseason, I thought it was a great opportunity for David Montgomery. DeAndre Swift can't stay healthy, and the Lions have already shown they have no trust in him. But then they shocked everyone, and at number 12 overall in the first round, they went with Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. The next day, they traded DeAndre Swift, so he doesn't matter anymore, but David Montgomery is still a big loser to me. Now, I love David Montgomery. I think he was a great fit for this Lions offense, but when you spend a top 12 pick on a running back, you clearly have a lot of plans for him. And keep in mind, Headliner Nation, they tried to trade for Deebo Samuel this offseason. They offered up a first and a third round draft pick. You don't think that maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is going to fill the role that they wanted to see from Deebo Samuel? Now, while David Montgomery over DeAndre Swift in fantasy leagues was a really easy pick for me, Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery is even easier now. David Montgomery coming in right now as the RB23 in ADP. I expect that to fall, and honestly, if he even reaches that by the end of the season in fantasy points, I would be shocked. He's going to have to approach 10 to 12 touchdowns this year in the red zone for him to even come close to mid RB or low RB2 status. Headliner Nation, in the comments, let me know who you thought were losers from this past weekend, or somebody with decreased fantasy value that you're no longer interested in. Yo, and if you're ready to ride and die with the Headliners this year, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.